I still remember the day I got the results. I felt so guilty. I felt like this was my fault. I shouldn't have had them take these DNA tests. And it mirrors so much what my mom said. Oh gosh, sorry mom if you're watching. This, and she was just saying, you know, it's kind of sad that this happened, but she's like, if it didn't happen, I wouldn't be here. And she's like, you wouldn't be here and your children wouldn't be here. Do I have a grandpa walking around alive who doesn't know I exist and all that stuff? Well, most certainly. But also, you know, I had a lot of anger. I was really angry at my grandmother, my Grammy Marion, which then I was angry at myself for being angry at her, because doing genealogy and ancestry work and family stories work, this is intimate stuff. It literally does not get more intimate, because we're digging into like, and who had babies with who, and who's their child, and who's their mom. It's like, this is not for the faint of heart. Hi. Nice to see you. I'm gonna put this down. It's really hot. Sometimes when I make my tea, it's so hot. It's like ungodly hot. I'm gonna let that cool down. Hi, I'm Danielle Romero, and welcome to my channel. Thank you for being here, where we talk about American identity and family stories. And I don't know what it is about the new setup with the couch in the office instead of the desk. I feel way more relaxed and feel like we're really here together and we're going to talk, which is good, because today's topic is pretty personal. I really do enjoy doing the big American stories and researching the, you know, the history of race in America and how that affects your family. But today we're going to like dig down deep and personal. So when I'm thinking about the family tree, you know, I love the metaphor of the family tree and the branches and the roots. And I mean, I have my Be a Good Ancestor shirt on. I mean, I'm all about it. If you want to grab one, you can grab one at nytonashville.com. Love the family tree. But something happened when I first started this journey. Um, I, I'm already like getting nervous. So my grandpa passed away. And this is my mom's dad. And so my mom's parents, her mom is my grandmother Marion. That's the Louisiana Creole side. That's the Mexican side. All of the, yeah, the secrets, and I've been working on that. Her dad is Irish, like straight up Irish. Really loved Notre Dame and the Fighting Irish, and he and I had a good relationship. When I was a little girl, we had this little game where I was in upstate New York, so whoever saw the first robin redbreast in the yard, and you know, that's like the you know, note that spring is here finally in frozen tundra of upstate New York. Whoever saw it first would call the other one and say, like, I found the first robin redbreast. And so whenever I see one, I think of my grandpa. And so he passed away 6 years ago, and decided this would be a good time for us to take DNA tests, because my mom's mom wasn't doing well. She was still with us, and I thought, this is it. Like, I took mine, and you know, obviously I had some unexpected stuff because of the Louisiana heritage, but overall, like, made a lot of sense. And so my mom took it. One of my aunts took it. My mom's sister, my mom's brother. Take the DNA test. Take it after my grandpa dies. I start collecting photos of my grandpa. I still remember the day I got the results. I was actually on a trip with my husband and our 3 little kids. And I remember I was walking towards the kids in the back because they needed me to like switch a snack for them or something while we were driving in our car. And I'm walking back, and I get the alert on my phone that my uncle's DNA test results were ready. This is like my uncle. Like, I remember going to their house when I was little, and you know, we grew up with these cousins and everything. So I open up the test, and I see that he's not matching as a full uncle to me. and he's not matching as a full sibling to my mom. And I was like, this is weird. Then my mom's other sister takes the DNA test, same thing. So this was her older brother and her younger sister. And my aunt, who I adore, love so much, so thankful for her, she had the same thing happen. She showed up as my mom's half sister, and for me, a half aunt, which, she's still my aunt, but you know what I mean. And so it turned out that I was looking for one thing in the family story with this DNA test. I was looking for ancestry answers. I was looking for, questions to who are we, and there were some things I had taken for granted, like my grandpa's side of the family. Well, it turns out he wasn't my biological grandpa. He wasn't my mom's biological dad. I did not know what to do with this information. I freaked out in the car, freaked out. I think the kids ended up falling asleep while we were driving because they were still little. Not they did that back then. And I was just a total mess. I had so many emotions. Guilt was a big one. So guilty. I felt so guilty. Which we'll get to that. Regret, shock, anger, confusion, and then there's flashes of like the reality of it. I was like, well, I have a grandpa I don't know about. Who is this person? What is this person? Is he still alive? How did this happen? What's going on? What do we do? And then the horrible pit in my stomach of saying, I've got to tell my mom. I went back and forth about that, about like what to do with this information, because I felt like she had a right to know, but I felt so guilty. I felt like this was my fault. I shouldn't have had them take these DNA tests. I shouldn't have pushed for this, but it's like I had no idea that this was going to happen. I mean, like, to tell you that these DNA tests radically changed my life in so many ways would be an understatement. I felt like a branch of the family tree was broken off. I alluded to this a little bit in my video a week or two ago when I was saying I had worked out my grandpa's family tree back to Ireland. And I remember in, I don't know, an emotional state of some kind, deleting it. I don't know, should I have deleted it? No, but I was like, I'm not related to these people, And to me, it really felt like the most physical thing I could do to like saw that branch off and be like, okay, it's not part of my tree. I'm getting rid of it. I'm cutting it off. I'm getting rid of it. And, so I've had a couple years to work through this, but how did I tell my mom? So what I ended up doing is I called my dad, and this was back when we still lived in New York. So we were, just a couple minutes away from each other. And I brought him to Dunkin Donuts. That's his place. That's our place. Love Dunkin Donuts. To get a coffee. And I was like, I need to talk to you. So I get a coffee, we can drive around. And I told him, and I was not really sure what to do. I really hadn't come to a conclusion on what to do. But when I dropped him off back home, he decided that it would be better for him to talk to my mom. So he tells my mom, and she like calls me. And it was just really weird. And, we're still working through all of that stuff because my mom is incredible. She is one of those people. Literally nothing can get this woman down. Nothing. Like, she always looks on the bright side. Like, to me, sometimes I'm like, can you just be mad for a second? Can you just be angry for a second? And she's like, yeah, I understand all this stuff, but like, a real positive thing. And I'm like, okay, Mr. Rogers, thanks. But it was amazing. And so we started working through, what does it look like when like you have, this is called a non-paternal event, an NPE. But there are other events that don't have to be this exact scenario that maybe you've gone through, where there is a sense of betrayal in the family, or like you're working on your family story, or you're doing the DNA test and you come across a big lie or a big secret. And it feels like, well, what do we do with this? Now I want to give you some more details on what happened. But I will tell you now, I try to be really open with everybody. Like, we all have a bias, right? You have a bias, I have a bias, you have a lens that you look through for the world, me too. I try to be open about mine. It's okay if we don't have the same lens. But I'm a Christian. That's how I view the world. And so I remember, applying this story to what was going on, because one of my favorite stories in the whole Bible, whether you're a Christian or not, there's some good stories in that book, right? Is Joseph in the book of Genesis. And he was betrayed by his brothers. They were jealous of him, and they threw him in a well, and then they ended up selling him as a slave, and all kinds of horrible things happened for Joseph for so long. And then I was just reading it today. Um, Later, Joseph rises to prominence in Egypt. He's Pharaoh's right hand, and his brothers have to come to Egypt for help because there's a famine, and they don't realize that they're talking to their brother Joseph, the brother that they thought was dead. And Joseph is in this position of power over the people that hurt him, that abandoned him, that betrayed him. And once they realize it's him, they're so afraid. And Joseph reaches out and extends this olive branch to them after he messes with their heads a little bit. It's a good story. I highly suggest reading it. And so anyway, I've been thinking about that, about what does it look like to reconcile, and maybe reconcile within ourselves these things when we're doing family research. And what does reconciliation look like when you have a broken family tree? I used to think that reconciliation meant that I need to either go to the person or people, or deal with the event in a way that makes it okay now, whatever that looks like. And I'm realizing that that is not true. That when we're dealing with this stuff, when these things come up, when we're hurt, we're betrayed by information that comes out, the first thing I think is just let yourself feel those things. I think it's interesting that when stuff like this happens, and please tell me if this has happened to you, that the immediate feeling for me anyway was guilt of, I did this. I brought this thing out in the open. No, I've destroyed the family. I've wrecked the family. It's like, I didn't do any of this. This happened before I was even a twinkle in my mother's eye, But also, I had a lot of anger. I was really angry at my grandmother, my Grammy Marion, which then I was angry at myself for being angry at her, because I loved her. She was was the only grandmother figure. I felt like we had a special connection. And it hurt me that she knew all of this and it was a secret, and that we never actually really got information from her. And I don't know how much my mom will want me to talk about that, so I'll just leave it at that. But I did feel a lot of anger. I was like, the timing was so bad. Could it be worse timing? Literally, my grandpa had just passed away. But the reason why I wanted everyone to take a DNA test was because my grandpa had just passed away. And I wanted to make sure that we didn't lose stuff, that we were saving the stuff. So I think this is just an important thing to talk about, is what do we do when this stuff comes up? When there's bad apples in the family tree, when you realize there's a whole branch of the tree that I thought was part of my tree and it's not, and what do we do with that? I mean, I think it depends on what the situation is for you, but there are a lot of people out there who have taken the DNA test and they found out there was an NPE, a non-paternal event, or a maternal event, probably too. I don't know, I think it's more likely though you think someone's your dad and they're not really your biological dad. And so the shock for me was, I think it's crazy, is you start looking back to when you have more information about something. I'm like, oh, how did I miss that? It's so obvious now. I think it's just amazing the stories that we can tell ourselves, and we kind of just miss we miss stuff that maybe other people can see. But I think there is this important part of grieving that an ancestor isn't who we thought they were, grieving that we don't have this biological connection we thought we did, grieving whatever that is, and coming to acceptance. And for me, it's been 6 years of this. And then the other thing is kind of respecting how my mom feels about it. I just love her perspective. She was like, that my grandpa, who we found out was not actually my grandpa, she's like, that's my dad. That is my dad. That's the dad I grew up with. That's the dad that I loved. So whatever has happened, that's still my dad. And I agree, like, that's my grandpa. But there's also the part of me who was like, well, do I have a grandpa walking around alive who doesn't know I exist and all that stuff? Well, most certainly. And so what I did was I had a DNA angel. That it looks cooler when it's written out. It's like DNA angel. um, Somebody that is an expert in DNA, and they do it for free to help you find your family based on your DNA. I was kind of a skeptic about it. I was like, I don't think that she's gonna be able to figure it out. Um, but my mom had a bunch of half siblings pop up on tests, and that's another thing that's been really hard because I want to connect to those people, and I actually talked with one of the girls off and on that summer a lot, and I liked her so much. But I feel like it's kind of hard because I'm like one step removed, and I don't really feel like it's my place now to be inserting all of this into my mom's life if she doesn't want that right now, or she's not ready for that, or she's just not there with that. And so it's messy. This is messy. I thought going down to Louisiana was the messy part. I'm like, oh no, sweet summer child. Like there's so much more. And then I think the other part, I just wrote some notes for myself on here on my phone. Um, Rebuilding the family narrative. What does that look like? I don't know. For some of you, there might be a gaping hole now, or maybe there's a new person that's folded in. You have a new sibling, you have a new aunt or uncle or grandparent or whatever. And what does that look like? And that's going to be different for everybody. But I think that step comes so much further down the line. I think we do need to respect how emotional this work is. I've said this before, but I have a lot of hobbies. I like to quilt. I used to like to garden. Now I hate all my plants. But things like that, they are not so personal and intimate. Like doing genealogy and ancestry work and family stories work. This is intimate stuff. It literally does not get more intimate because we're digging into like and who had babies with who and who's their child and who's their mom. It's like this is not for the faint of heart. And so for me, I have been trying to connect the fractured parts a little bit to get to a place where I feel like I have a sense of what happened in this story. Um, and it's not easy, but I do think that there is a beauty in brokenness. And what I mean by that is not that it's beautiful if the family tree broke, because it's certainly not, but the beautiful thing that has come out of it is being able to, how should I say this? When I go back to the story of Joseph, the ending of that story is really what I love. Joseph is like, he's just, his timing on stuff is so good. I'm like, if I could just have that kind of timing in my life, like, but he says, what you intended for evil, God intended for good. That's what he says to his brothers. And it mirrors so much what my mom said. Oh gosh, sorry, Mom, if you're watching. This, and she was just saying, it's kind of sad that this happened, but she's like, if it didn't happen, I wouldn't be here. And she's like, you wouldn't be here, and your children wouldn't be here. Things that were intended for evil. There is good. Doesn't mean the thing is good. Doesn't mean what happened was good, but good can grow from it. And so I've been sitting with that. I don't always like that. I'm just gonna be honest, but I think you can see that in so many of these stories, and it's true. I mean, I don't want to get into all the sordid details on here, but if that scenario had not happened, I wouldn't be here today. It's crazy to think about that stuff, isn't it? And so I think it has also pointed for me to look at the bigger picture of legacy. I just put out this merch, it's a Be a Good Ancestor merch. What does that mean, be a good ancestor? Well, some people said it doesn't make any sense to me. I'm like, well, I don't know. It just kind of came to me. And to me, what it means is uh, I'm going to be someone's ancestor one day. It doesn't, and even if you don't have children, you're going to be someone's ancestor one day. You were in this line. There's a continuity there. I want to leave a legacy um, of good, of something that they can be proud of um, not having a life without obstacles or problems, but being an ancestor who encountered those obstacles and overcame them. It kept going and persevered. I mean, those are the ancestors that I'm most proud of, not the ancestors who like, wow, I love this ancestor because their life was so easy. Look how great their life was. No, I'm so drawn to the ancestors who had some terrible situations and they persevered. They didn't give up. They kept going. And now I'm here. And so, thinking about legacy, what are we leaving behind? I think it's really a gift to be able to look at the mistakes other people have made in their lives when we're doing the family tree, doing the family story, and saying, I'm not perfect, but I'm going to pay more attention to not make that mistake. And that's a gift. Um, that's definitely a gift. And so, as far as finding closure, well, I don't have closure in this situation. We haven't talked to this man. He is alive still. The DNA angel did find him. Haven't reached out. And that's our choice, my mom's choice, but I respect it and I'm okay with that. And I think it's, again, maturing in this view that in order to have perfect closure, we have to have every box checked. And I'm learning that I don't need to. I can accept that this is part of the story that got me here. It kind of goes along with some of the other harder stories that are in my family tree. I was just reading about one of the stories the other day. I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to do this at the end of the video, so only like like some of you will see this. I'm working on a project. I don't know if I'm really going to put it out there. It's not a book per se. It's not a book like a standard way. And I just have notes on this, so I'm working on it. But it is a book of the journey of reconnecting and prose and poetry and documents and things like that. But I actually had underneath one of the poems that I think I might include in this book was a source is Elizabeth Shown Mills. She's amazing. The work she's done in Louisiana and her husband on the Lake Gary Mills. So she had, I'll put it up on the screen so you can see it, but she had wrote, quote, "From the entry, it is clear that he," and this is my seventh grandfather, "was not baptized as an infant, but was recently imported from Africa." Okay. So one of my ancestors, my seventh grandfather, his name, as it came to be known, was Romauld Antoine Ditsuris, or Ditsuris. It's French. Someone told me how to say it once. I don't remember, but I know that it means little mouse. It's like a little nickname. And he was brought over from Africa and he married an enslaved woman named Catherine. So that was my seventh grandmother. Together, they had a daughter named Rosette. This is my sixth grandmother. Well, there was a law at the time that if two enslaved people were married and had a child, you weren't supposed to sell them or separate them. Well, that didn't happen. When Rosette was just a toddler, her dad was sold to a plantation in New Orleans and never saw the family again. And that history, that fracture, that story, there is no closure to that story. There's not a happy ending. But I think when we look at these forces that are outside of our control, and sometimes these terrible stories that are evil, they are evil, terrible things that happen, but they're deeply connected to this present moment. If that hadn't happened, his daughter Rosette wouldn't have met the man that she had her children with. That's my direct line. That's why I'm sitting here with you right now holding these papers. It's that what was meant for evil, what was intended for evil, that there can be good from that. I think that's a universal truth. I don't think that you have to be a Christian to see that happen. And I think sometimes there's a really big space between the evil thing that happened and the good that comes out of it later. So I gotta sit with that. I can take a little tea sip for that. And I think in the way that we live our life now, the way I do, I've been trying not to use the microwave as much because I've been trying to teach myself, like, take a longer time, be more patient, use the stove to heat stuff up. It's awful. I want it right now. I didn't plan ahead. Now I'm starving. I need to heat it up now. But we are so trained to, like, instantaneous satisfaction, instantaneous. Like, and we watch a movie and it needs to wrap up in 90 minutes, and the story makes sense and it's good and it feels good and there's closure, and that's not the human experience. I would dare to say that there are evil things that happen that we have not seen the good come out of. Maybe there isn't from everything. I don't know. All I know is that this is messy work, doing family stories, and it's a lot easier to sit and, kind of do some of the more, like, pop history stories, and I do like those a lot. I think they're fun, but this is the stuff this is the real stuff, and it's the stuff I'm glad to have you here for. So let me know. I don't know. I don't know if this is ever going to see the light of day. Just thinking about it. So, working on this right now. And if you'd like to grab some Be a Good Ancestor merch, I'll leave a link to that below. Let me know if you had an MPE show up in your tree or something similar like that. I'd love to hear how you handled it. And yeah, otherwise, we'll talk soon.